Yeah, hi folks. Today I'm going to show a clip or a segment that was shown on the Peta Credlin show on Sky News, where she interviewed Kevin Donnelly on the cultural left and political correctness. And my God, Australia's lucky. At least they've got something. They've got Sky News. We have absolutely nothing in New Zealand. Anyway, we'll watch this.
Show Kevin Donnelly, as always, you're a bit of a favoured guest with my viewers. Just the other day, Hugh Morgan, he's the former head of Western Mining, as you know, is part of a new group to lobby Australia to leave the Paris Agreement. He was pretty outspoken, Hugh Morgan. He said this, that Western millennials have embraced Islamism over climate change as a new secular religion after being indoctrinated by the education system.
And he's absolutely right there. It is their new religion, and they have been indoctrinated, and they've been indoctrinated here as well.
He says there's no balance with the way young people are coming through our education system on a lot of these big issues that have got economic impacts. Now, you've warned about this, Kevin Donnelly, for many years. Are we only just waking up now?
It's a problem that we didn't really address this many years ago. I know when John Howard was Prime Minister, he talked about the battle of ideas, and Tony Abbott as well. But since then, nothing's really changed.
And yes, and this is the same in New Zealand as well. Way back when Don Brash was the leader of the National Party, he was actually going to set up a portfolio on this very issue and have a special minister for political correctness. But then came John Key, and his left-wing ideas came in.
And so we've had many years now where students in primary and secondary school have been indoctrinated with what I call the cultural left ideology on issues like the environment, multiculturalism, Indigenous, gender, all of these.
Yeah, and it's exactly the same in New Zealand.
Issues that the cultural left are using to really radically change society. So it's about time that we address the issue, that politicians in particular realise that it's not just a matter of the economic debate. We really do need to look at the culture wars and how we can address the fact that the cultural left has taken control of the classroom, and many young people now have been indoctrinated.
Absolutely.
You know, a lot of people think that you can put balance and intellectual rigour back into society as people get older and are mugged by the reality of buying a home.
But that's the problem. Half the left never ever grow past school, and they stay, and a lot of them, they are still hard left when they are 50 years old. They just never grow past school.
Raising a family, but you argue you've got to go to the source, you've got to take this fight up inside our education system, and that people have to be sort of on guard about the subjects that are being taught, and it's not just, you know, looking at science subjects and worrying there about literature as well. The indoctrinations even in maths, where problems are about Indigenous disadvantage, let's say, or problems about climate change, it's rife right across the curriculum, isn't it?
I reviewed the national curriculum 4 years ago with Ken Welchar, and that was an issue we saw straight away, that under the Rudd-Gillard government, whether it was Indigenous, Asian or environmental perspectives, that had to be used in every subject from prep to year 10. And it really was always the cultural left, this left-wing view. There was never balance in the way that was presented. So if a student in a classroom, for whatever reason, said, I'm a skeptic when it comes to climate change, they would be held down, they wouldn't be listened to. I've talked to students at year 12 but also university. They've told me that they've had to give the politically correct answer on these issues, or else they'll lose marks. They often fail.
And that happens here too. That happens in New Zealand. They might not tell the students they'll fail, but they do fail them.
So it's a problem that we have to address. It's urgent. We need to look at it. As I said before, John Howard talked about the battle of ideas. That is the new front, if you like. That's the ground we have to cover if we're going to get some balance in terms of what young people are learning. Because what the cultural left has done, they've taken control of the education system. And as George Orwell wrote in 1984, if you can control how people think, if you can control the use of language, if you can impose groupthink, then you control the future.
Absolutely.
So there is an issue here, we need to address it.
Give me some examples, Kevin, of where there are problems, in different curriculum or where governments have got things like your report and failed to take on recommendations.
I wrote in The Australian about this issue. One of the best examples is the way they teach citizenship. Now, it used to be a citizen, you were patriotic. That didn't mean you were xenophobic or you hated other people who weren't part of your culture. But we used to teach to be proud of our country. But if you look at the national curriculum, they have a definition of citizenship, which is subjective, relative. It can mean whatever you want. So if you're Islamic fundamentalist living in Sydney or Melbourne, you go to the Middle East, you fight for ISIS, terrorism, you come back to Sydney or Melbourne, under this crazy definition, that's okay, because what you are as a citizen just depends on your point of view.
That's exactly right, and it's the same here. And it's basically tribalism.
Now that's madness. We should be teaching young people in Australia to be proud of our country for all its faults. We should be proud of Western civilization. That's why so many hundreds of thousands of people want to come and live here, because we are a peaceful, democratic society, and we should be teaching that in terms of politics and citizenship. Another example would be when you look at how history is taught. Children are taught that our history, Western history, goes back to Europe and the United Kingdom, that's full of discrimination, inequality, injustice. But again, that's only one view. It's very narrow, very biased. We should be giving young people the full picture. And the full picture is, for all its faults, that Western civilization that Australia inherited in terms of our Westminster parliamentary system, our common law system, Judeo-Christianity, that's why we're such a peaceful, democratic country, such a stable democracy.
Australia like to downplay the influence of political correctness. You've written about political correctness before. Your new book is about political correctness inside education. This is a real worry for the centre-right, yet the coalition is in power in Canberra, in South Australia and New South Wales. Why aren't they tackling this as they should?
It's a bit like fighting yesterday's battles. Michael Gove was Secretary of State Education in England. He wrote a very good book, Celsius 7, about 15 years ago. And he made the point, which was a very good one, that the debate really shifted from economics, from the left attacking capitalism, to what he called the culture wars, what John Howard called the battle of ideas. Over 15, 20 years ago, the battle moved from economics, financial affairs, trade unions, even though that's still very important, it moved to the cultural left's long march through the institutions.
Exactly. And when he's talking about the long march through the institutions, he's referring to Marxism. And actually, I'll post a link below this video from the American thinker on this issue.
Because the cultural left realised they would never win the revolution at the barricades. What they had to do was to take control of the family, of schools, of universities, of the media. And they've been very, very successful. And I'm proud to be a conservative. But what I've realised over the last 20 years is that we've been fighting an old battle. We should be up to date and we should realise what's really been going on.
Well, thank you for your time, Kevin Donnelly. I know your book's been launched today. I'll put all the details up on my Facebook site so people can read your book and get engaged in this fight at